confidence is there. Hope is back for Nigeria.
What next after President Tinubu's latest move on security, meeting with Chadian counterparts Idris Deby Itno, and a visit to Plateau State? Hello and welcome. This is Executive Recap and I am Musbad and Wahab. Thank you for remaining with us on the NTA. Nigeria and Chad have agreed on a joint responsibility to combat terrorism and banditry at their confluence areas. President Bola Tinubu and his counterparts from Chad announced this resolve after a strategic meeting in Abuja. President Muhammad Idris Deby Itno arrived at the State House about noon on Thursday to honor the invitation of the chief host, and a return honor as President Bola Tinubu received a special guest. Beyond the handshake, the ambience and representations here indicated the importance of the meeting more than just an ordinary one. It was a strategic move, another effort by the Nigerian leader to address the security challenge in parts of the country, particularly terrorism and banditry in the northeastern part of the country. The interface between the two parties was to discuss the need for a rejuvenated collaboration towards tackling the common challenge of insecurity in the Chad Basin, and the existing mechanism of multinational joint task force presents a ready platform to strengthen the collaborative war against terrorism and banditry. The deliberations in sessions lasted more than 2 hours. Rising from the meeting, a new resolve emerged.
The two countries is a borderless resolve to combat terrorism and fight them, eliminate all acts of terror to our people, and ensure we maintain the sovereignty of our two nations. We have agreed on joint responsibility. We've come a long way. What we have inherited from our forebearers is to ensure peace and stability for development of our region, to ensure that our people can trade, commerce, and moving resolve in one uniform. A tiny geographical separation and the language is not a barrier. It's an opportunity to fight terrorism and develop our people for prosperity now and for the future.
They believe this new level of partnership will yield greater results in ensuring peace and stability for the social and economic development of the region,
and give further assurances to our people, the people of the region, including the Nigerian Republic.
Nigeria shares boundaries with Chad in the northeast. And away from the northeast to north central, as President Bola Tinubu took another decisive step towards solving the recurring crisis on the plateau as he visited the state on the heels of a recent attack on Agwan Rukuba. The president decided to visit Plateau following the briefing he received from the state governor, Caleb Mutfwang, a day earlier. It was to commiserate with the government and people of the state on the March 29 gun attacks that claimed the lives of innocent citizens in the Angwan-Rukuba district of Jos North local government area. President Tinubu directed the Minister of Defense, General Christopher Musa, retired, Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Waidi Shaibu, and the Inspector General of Police, Olatunji Disu, to unearth and find the killers of innocent Nigerians.
I promise you that this experience will not repeat itself. I take, for example, Favor Roda. I know the pain. I see how on the video you head on to Abuja and the pain and agony in your heart. But it's only God who can give you joy and comfort. No amount of money can pay all of you back. Yes, as government, we will try our best to comfort you, to work with you. The best solution is for just to be just. The one that people like us grew up to know. Governor, you and I were elected on a promise of peace and prosperity, not to comfort and create widows and widowers.
President Tinubu assured the people of Plateau State that the federal government will deploy an artificial intelligence-enabled network of over 5,000 digital cameras to help law enforcement agencies combat insecurity in the state.
Let me give this assurance. I don't want to be here commiserating and consoling. I want to be here to establish peace. Leaders who have received us, who had accommodated us politically, I brought the symbol of this cap to break the shackle of violence, shackle of ignorance, shackle of poverty, shackle of hopelessness. We must break it together.
Governor Caleb Mutfwang commended security agencies for their ongoing efforts and expressed confidence that their interventions will continue to strengthen security.
Even though we came into office in a storm of this insurgency and terrorism, we, through your leadership, were able to stem the tide, and we were able to steady the ship of state to the point where we began to enjoy relative peace. And that is why we began to notice some inflow of direct investment, both local and foreign, because people were beginning to have confidence in the peace that we had attained. This incident of last Sunday is a temporary setback. I'm persuaded that by the grace of God, we will overcome that setback and continue on our trajectory to peace and tourism, to peace and prosperity.
President Tinubu consequently granted our request for a stakeholders meeting with him in Abuja to find lasting solution to the crisis. And now for a fresh perspective to the issues, let's join the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Community Engagements, North Central, Dr. Abiodun Esiet. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The attack on Ngwan is about the latest of such attacks in Plateau State. People have condemned it severally, attributing it to different causes, and of course, you have been on ground. What do you see as the underlying factors contributing to this crisis?
Okay, thank you very much. Like you said, it was a gunman attack because we saw government approaching that community coming from a neighboring state. And we saw the pathway they came through. So it was more of a government and terrorist attack in that community because from our investigation, there was no underlying issues happening between any tribal or religious group in that community. And there was no provocative attacks in that community prior to that attack. So it was majorly a gunman attack, and the security agency are doing all their best to make sure that they arrest the perpetrator of this violence and also bring a lasting peace. Currently, there's still a curfew in the community between 3 p.m. and 8 a.m. so that we could restrict movement and security agency be able to identify and also arrest those people in charge. But, unlike other issues that have been happening in Plateau State. For you, it's been about 2 decades, and from the president's visit, you could hear leaders talking about some of the root causes of some of those violence.
Okay, you are part of the federal government's delegation to Plateau State when President Bola Tinubu visited. What would you say has been the impact of the president's visit?
Okay, thank you so much. So we were part of the advance team of Mr. President's visit to Jos on the 3rd, and our major mandate was for us to do on-the-spot assessment. We went along with other security chiefs and security agencies, like the chief of army staff was in Rukaba community live, to do his own on-the-spot assessment about what has happened and how the community is moving along, and the IG of the police was also there to do his own assessment. For us as a community engagement team, we are part of the high-level team deployed by Mr. President to do the on-the-spot assessment, hear from the witnesses, hear from the victims, what has happened. Because, the initial plan of Mr. President was to visit the community, but because he was engaged with the president of Chad, he couldn't come in to just on time, and that's why we actually mobilized some of the victims of the incident to the venue where Mr. President was going to meet with the other stakeholders. So ours is to do, we were there live, we visited Jos, we visited the government house as well to document the political concerns and to meet with the political leader of the state and document his own concern. But most importantly, we were at the community and Gwarukaba community in Jos, not local government, to document concerns and also hear about life after the incident, what has happened, how has the government agency been managing that, and the burial preparations, what are the people's fears, what were their concerns. So we've documented those concerns and it will be shared with Mr. President. Some of the witnesses shared their experiences on how they saw the bandits coming. They came with gunfire. At a point, they started using cutlasses to kill people and attack people. And that was some of the experience. We also saw some of the real spots of where some people were murdered. And it was really a gruesome experience for us. And we wish and we hope that this will not repeat itself again.
Pathetic situation indeed, and it's also good to know that you're still following up after the president's visit. So what has been the reaction of the residents of that community after President Tinubu's visit?
Okay, for people who have been following the incident of Plateau State for years, they know the impact of Mr. President's visit was very historical. Because I'm sad that some people using political gains to actually channel the narrative in a very negative way. So it was an historical visit which leaders and people who have been following Plateau incident actually appreciated. Why? Because the people, the media are not talking about the critical analysis of the stakeholders' engagement. For the first time, the president actually directed the engagement, calling leaders by their name and asking them to commit themselves, because he believes from the report we have submitted and from the security briefing, he knew that it was important for all the past and current leaders to be on the same page and commit themselves to addressing the issue of the crisis. Like one of the leaders said that the issue of this crisis can only be solved by the people in Jos, showing that the people, and it's not a security dimension, that they don't need security. People should commit themselves to this, because this 20 years of historical mistrust, historical grievance that has grown to be a critical security crisis. And, if people or past leaders are not committing, and some of the past leaders, you saw the president mention their name and gave them the opportunity to speak at different dimensions where they were heading as governors in that state. You could see the dimension of the crisis, both negative or positive. It was recorded during some of their tenure. Jan was there, Senator Lalong was also there, was asked to speak, and some of the traditional leaders and religious leaders were also asked to speak, because there's also a religious dimension to it. A day before Mr. President's visit, there was a religious crisis in Nasarawa Gong, where some of the people, Muslims and Christians, were killing each other because of some of the provocative speeches done by some of their leaders, including some foreign personalities coming to Plateau State and also, sharing negative speeches, promoting people to hate one another, which Mr. President actually addressed in his press statement concerning the Plateau crisis. So it was more of holding ourselves accountable. And Mr. President took a major decision and said that all the leaders should come to Abuja and have a closed-door meeting with him. That was also a positive step by Mr. President to make sure that we are not just coming here to talk about it. We are going to walk you through, because people are now talking about it as if it started yesterday. It started 2 decades ago, and based on that, we needed to really understudy, address the root causes, and make sure that these issues are brought to rest. But, we can't do this. Mr. President can't do this alone without, the buy-in of the leaders, the past and current leaders, to commit themselves, because these leaders actually know what has been happening. I have summarized the white paper report of this incident from 2001 to date. Some of the provisions and recommendations by different government administrations up to today have not been fulfilled. So why have they not been fulfilled? What are the challenges? What are the fears? So those are the critical questions people are not asking. And because Mr. President understood some of these root causes, that's why he directed the stakeholders meeting the way it is. It's sad that we couldn't take him to the committee because of the limited time he had. And he spent over an hour in Plateau State. Contrary to social media, saying that he spent 10 minutes, he spent over an hour, and they could verify this by the live broadcast of different media channels to show the number of hours he spent. So he spent those hours and directed the engagement, which I think should be a plus to Mr. President, because he understood the challenges and he committed himself, not only himself, committed the leaders of Plateau State to commit in addressing those challenges, because there's also this ethno-religious dimension to it, which we all need to understand and, work together with Mr. President to address.
Okay, we hope that strategic meeting will come through and bring a lasting solution to the crisis in Plateau State. But you have not really been too far from the state since your appointment. You've been on ground, and of course I remember that a presidential community peace structure was set up in that state, particularly last year. You also presented awards to a particular community, recognizing their demonstration of commitment to peace. So what has happened to that structure? Any breakdown?
Okay, thank you so much. So the structure was part of the presidential directive to make sure that we set up a community peace structure where we can establish early warning and early response, where we can also continue deliberate dialogue and also continue our campaign on promoting social cohesion. From the analysis and some of the findings in Jos, we saw that there's historical mistrust between different groups. Some people even raised their children not to not to even have a friend from another ethnic group. That was how bad it is. But we felt, okay, for you to address these challenges, because we all have a common enemy, and that's the bandits or criminals who are coming to our community to attack us. But you also need to recognize and acknowledge that some people have been here who are your neighbors, who, might sadly be sharing the same tribe with people that are attacking you or the same religion, but it's for you to work together with them and say, okay, how can we make sure there's a lasting peace? And that's why we recognize one of the communities in Plateau State for promoting social cohesion. This is one of the communities where, when Christians are praying, the Muslims guide them and protect them. And when Muslims are praying, the Christians guide them and protect them. Unlike, the last occurrence that you saw a day before President's visit, where the Muslims were killing the Christians based on some of the provocative speeches by both religions or religious leaders in both groups. It's just for us to promote social cohesion so that there's early response. When there's a symptoms or sign that there's a little crisis that can really aggravate into a major crisis or a reprisal attack, the community peace structure come into play, work with the security agency to be sure that this crisis doesn't go out of hand. So, before now, everybody needs to acknowledge the fact that Mr. President has been in Plateau State more than ever before. We've set up community peace structure. We've even intervened and gone to some of the community. We're in Bassa local government, we're in Bariki-Ladi, we're in different communities to do assessment and also document concerns. So it's part of the presidential program and plans to make sure that there's a lasting peace in the North Central region and also in Plateau State.
Senior Special Assistant to the President on Community Engagement, North Central, Dr. Abiodun Eset, thank you so much for your time talking to us on the program.
Thank you so much.
Now, President Bola Tinubu has expressed delight at improved development of the grassroots, commending how some states effectively and judiciously utilize the increased revenue accrued to their respective states. President Tinubu spoke in Ikperu after inaugurating some infrastructural projects, which include the Gateway International Airport executed by the Ogun State government under Governor Dapo Abiodun. State governors from across the country and captains of industry joined elders in Ogun State, including former President Olusegun Obasanjo, to receive President Bola Tinubu. It was all for the infrastructural project completed by Governor Dapo Abiodun under the 7 years of his administration. They include the Gateway International Airport and the accompanying facilities, which are Airport Terminal, Cargo Terminal, the first 2 Gateway Airlines aircraft, the Agricultural Processing Warehouse, and the Ilishan-Ikperu Road.
God bless.
At an interface with the state stakeholders afterwards, President Tinubu commended the governor for the project and other initiatives to improve health and agricultural sectors in the state.
I'm pleased to see the increased revenue from prairie agriculture is being effectively and judiciously used to build our country. I congratulate the people of this great state for supporting the government that is delivering measurable progress, and I thank you for your continued faith in our party.
From his administration at the federal level, President Tinubu promised continued commitment towards socio-economic development and security of the country.
The God has endowed a great country, and it's liberating us from the past mismanagement, the lack of vision. We are back again as a nation, well respected, highly recognized, and with beautiful future today, tomorrow, and thereafter.
The state governor appreciated President Bola Tinubu for his leadership, support, and the federal project across the southern parts of the country.
On behalf of the good people of the state and all the 16 southern states, I want to thank you for the Shagamu-Ijebode portion of the Shagamu-Benin Expressway. You graciously approved it and is nearing completion in reinforced concrete pavement. I also thank you for the takeover of the Taisho University, the approval of the commercial oil exploration in Abuja, and the planned reactivation of the Olokola liquefied natural gas project, amongst many others, too numerous to mention.
May God Almighty bless Governor Dakwabiodo and his administration. And may God bless the president who believes in true federalism for releasing money to the states. And the states are consistently saying that they are happy with the president because they no longer borrow money to pay salaries. They don't borrow money to do all these projects they are saying.
Mr. President, I have used this airport. I've landed here from Abuja. And it took me 45 minutes from here to my home, which is at least 25 minutes shorter than if I had landed in Lagos.
The president also inaugurated the customs hub, also in Ikperu. The project, when completed, would include a training college, federal operations unit, zonal office, primary and secondary schools, library, residential apartments, among others. It is projected to be the largest complex of the Nigeria Customs Service in the country. And that has been it on Executive Recap for the week on the NTA. Thanks a lot for being part of it. Join us again next week for another edition of the program. God bless you and yours. God bless Nigeria.